Hello, everyone. Today is the very first painting in my new intuitive painting series, and we are going to call this the Bright Star series. The inspiration for this particular painting comes from a gift one of my aunts gave me probably close to 20 years ago now. It's a Willow Tree angel figurine, and the inscription says, Bright Star, reflecting a light from within. That phrase has really stayed with me for all these years. This piece is also connected to the recent artist grant that I received, which I've mentioned in some of my previous watercolor testing videos. Over the last few videos, I've been experimenting with different watercolor palettes, reds, yellows, greens, and blues, to try to figure out what colors fit with this new body of work. So today is the beginning of actually putting those color studies into practice. This video is going to be a little shorter because intuitive painting for me happens in layers and stages. I usually start with watercolor washes, let them dry completely, and then come back later with fresh eyes and a different mindset. Before I start painting, I quickly wanted to show you how I organize my paints. I keep them separated into warm and cool tones inside this little caddy that I got from Hobby Lobby. So I have warm yellows, warm reds, warm blues, cool blues. And this setup really helps me when I'm building the initial intuitive painting for the watercolor wash and then the subsequent acrylic layers that go over top. For the middle of this piece, my inspiration is the soft off-white color of the angel figure in the middle with a bright blue star outlining it. When I think of a bright star, I don't just think astronomy, although my science background definitely plays into that. But I also think of moments of success and hope and growth and light showing up during difficult times. Recently, I've seen a lot of really meaningful milestones happen in my life. Some of the good things that have recently happened include receiving this artist grant that inspired this painting. I was also selected for a research opportunity and received a grant for some professional development funding, and that continues with my professional life as a professor. So when I think of all of those moments together, the image that comes to mind is this bright star reflecting light outward. So I'm starting by completely wetting the canvas because I want the watercolor to move naturally and blend on its own. One thing that I love about intuitive painting is that I'm not trying to force perfection. I'm just creating a starting point and letting the materials react on their own. The first color that I'm using is Viridian Green. I'm using a watercolor that's heavily watered down. I used this in previous videos to test which kinds of greens could act as a placeholder for teal. I'm only using a tiny amount of pigment with a lot of water because I want more of a wash effect rather than actual paint, covered paint. Eventually, this color will become phthalo blue to match the color of that star, and it will lighten and darken as the intuitive painting process progresses. So right now, it's just acting as a placeholder. And when I think of the shape of a bright star, I imagine something geometric, but still soft and flowing. So I'm building a 6-point star shape by layering triangles and then allowing the water to pull the pigment outward. It does not need to stay perfect in the intuitive painting world, and that's important if any of you are interested in getting into intuitive painting, is it's the opposite of perfection. I like that the edges are bleeding and softening, so that feels more alive and I can connect better with a painting if it's a little bit on the messy side. As the water starts to move around, I can see that there's little pools of pigment that settle kind of wherever they land. And that's how I think of success too. Sometimes growth spreads in unexpected directions, like this artist grant. And some of the brightest moments come from things that we've never had a plan. So now for the center of the star, I'm using cadmium yellow watercolor. This is definitely brighter than what I'll probably end up with in the finished piece, but I wanted to have a little bit of that warm glowing center. Um, when I think of stars, I definitely think of warmth and light, and you can already see the yellow and teal beginning to blend together naturally on the canvas. The water movement is one of my favorite parts of the process. For the outer edge, I'm adding Cobalt Blue watercolor. This color is actually going to be much darker later, probably closer to a navy blue or even black. Um, when I think of stars, I don't just think of the light themselves. I think of the contrast between the dark and the light and the brightness that exists because of the darkness around it. So I wanted that deeper blue-black edge surrounding the bright center. At this point, you can see the original star shape is already starting to disappear and evolve into something more abstract. And that's exactly what intuitive painting is. I don't start with a rigid final image in mind. The painting becomes whatever it needs to become as I work through it. Because some of that darker yellow pooled in the middle of the painting, I am gently lifting some of that excess watercolor with a paper towel because I want to preserve some of the lighter areas and create texture within the wash. I'm not removing too much pigment because I really like the way the colors are naturally blending and separating. And now, after removing some of that darker color, we can see there's some white areas, teal edges. There's still that yellow light in the center, the deeper blue tones around the outside. It's subtle, but it's already starting to feel that emotional connection that we have with a bright star of reflecting light from within. So this is where I'm going to stop for today. One of the biggest parts of my intuitive painting process is allowing the painting to rest and allowing my brain to clear away from the idea of the bright star. Um, and then I can come in with fresh eyes and new perspective. And even though it's going to still be called the Bright Star series, who knows where this painting is going to end up. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember to like and subscribe if you would like to follow on this series.